Today is May 26, 2025. My name is Rob Carr of Kalamazoo Right to Life. This is Pro-Life Week on a special Memorial Day program. Well, today, it's been about a week and a half since news have come out about Joe Biden's cancer report or announcement. So I thought I'm going to finally weigh in on Joe Biden. And it's not pretty. So I'm going to go through a few bullet points, and we'll just see how this all plays out. First off, I've mentioned this months ago, but I'm completely convinced that Joe Biden should never have run for re-election in 2024. Back in 2020, there's good evidence that he probably shouldn't have run that time either. I mean, I think it was in 2019 that videos began to surface on YouTube that showed that Joe Biden, the former vice president, was in cognitive decline. And it was pretty clear, at least it was clear to me and a lot of other conservatives, that Joe Biden was not up to this job of president. But he won, and even his victory was murky because he was being challenged in 2020 by Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who won the first two primaries, and the Democrats were concerned that if Sanders wasn't stopped, he was gonna win the nomination. And Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, through his support, they changed the calendar for the Democratic primaries, and I think South Carolina went third, and Clyburn endorsed Biden, and basically the party talked all the other candidates except Bernie Sanders to drop out, so that it could be a two-man race, the establishment Biden versus the socialist Sanders. And in a matter of a week, every other candidate dropped out, every single one, including the one who I felt was the most qualified and best, which was Senator Klobuchar of Minnesota. But they didn't want a woman. They didn't want a woman, at least then. She would have been a much better choice even in 2024 than Kamala Harris, but that's another issue. So he's basically coronated to get the nomination in 2020, and he even implied that he was going to be a transitional president to get rid of Trump, but he was going to be passing the baton then in 2024. So he was going to be a one-term president. Well, obviously that didn't turn out. And he runs again he announces in 2023 that he's running for president the next year. Okay, so the issue then, we saw his cognitive skills diminished. I mean, we saw it, and everybody saw it, but only if you were watching certain TV programs or cable stations, because the legacy media was covering up and hiding Joe Biden's health. They just were hiding it. And there's this new book out by Jake Tapper, Original Sin. To me, the original sin was Biden's decision to run for re-election. It's not that necessarily that the media and the Democratic Party and the White House were in cahoots, lying to the American public, which they were. When I think back of Joe Scarborough of MSNBC saying something like, this is the best Joe Biden ever. Mark this date down. He's never been better. He's on top of his game. He's the best ever. What a joke. I mean, to think that Joe Scarborough had not seen Joe Biden's performances, speaking, walking, tripping, struggling through sentences, struggling through news conferences. I mean, on and on and on. Biden was revealing himself, but I think a lot of the American public didn't know it because ABC, NBC, CBS did not report his cognitive decline. So were they hiding this? Were they covering it up? Yes, 1,000 times yes. The media is complicit with the White House and the Democratic Party on covering up Joe Biden's health decline. Okay. So then comes the debate. And obviously, this is the first time that the American public sees for the first time in real time how bad Joe Biden really is, health-wise. How much he struggled to put his words together, to put his thoughts together, to challenge Trump. And actually, if you look back at the video of the debate, Trump realized during the debate, in the first part of the debate, that Biden was a train wreck. I mean, he could see it. And very unlike Trump, he did not attack him like he did in 2020. He was pretty moderate, pretty respectful of Joe Biden because he realized, just give him enough rope and he will hang himself, which is exactly what happened. Biden self-destructed in front of our very eyes, and Trump didn't have to do hardly anything to expose it. It was all Biden's own doing. So then the American public is we got to get rid of this guy. And the party for a month, the party propped him up and basically said, what you saw on TV, you really didn't see. He's really sharp. He just had a bad night. He had a cold. He had a bad night. And he's on top of his game. Well, we know, after the debate, he finally dropped out. I think after the assassination attempt on Trump, and there was a sympathy vote that pulled his way, everybody knew that Biden was going to lose. So they dumped him and put in Kamala Harris, who was actually a worse candidate than Biden, although she was coherent. Well, she could at least think or read a teleprompter, but maybe she wasn't that coherent either. But with all the word salad she was engaging in. But anyway, she was the wrong candidate as well. Now, I just want to shift corners a little bit to the Hur Report. Remember, back in 2023, I think it was, there was an FBI raid on Trump's home in Florida. They took out presidential documents that the National Archives wanted back, and there was going to be some kind of a struggle on who's going to have possession of these documents. And then we found out that Joe Biden had documents from when he was vice president and when he was senator. He had documents at the Penn Center. He had documents at his home in Rehoboth Beach, his vacation home, in boxes next to his Corvette, real secure. So there was an investigation by Robert Hur, a special, I think it was an attorney, U.S. attorney, and he did a report, and the report said basically that no grand jury would prosecute or bring up charges against Joe Biden because they would be convinced that Biden is a good-natured, friendly, older gentleman with a very bad memory, and they wouldn't prosecute. Oh, and the Democrats just screamed, ableist, or ageist, you're attacking him because of his age. But then the Republicans wanted to have the audio interview between Robert Hur and Joe Biden released. Well, the Democrats didn't want to do that, and they fought that for months. Well, a few weeks ago, the Hur Report was finally released, and we saw, again, basically in real time, that Biden was actually worse than even the Hur Report stated. He was just in decline. And he's 82 years old. I'm not saying that we should not have sympathy for a person who is going through the stages of life, as we all will. Okay. So now comes to the announcement that happened last week, where I guess it was the day before the Jake Tapper book is going to be released, Original Sin, the book, and the Biden team announces that they just discovered that Joe Biden is in stage 4 prostate cancer, and he's being treated with like some hormone treatments. And I have a hard time believing, I think most Americans have a hard time believing that he's only been out of office for 5 months. But I have a hard time believing that the President of the United States of America, the leader of the free world, would not have had regular, routine checkups to check out his health. I had a physical back in March, and I had to have a blood test. And when I got the results of the blood test, the first item, they're not just checking my cholesterol, but the first item on the list was this PAS test, and it showed that I'm in the normal range. And I heard somewhere, I don't know if this is true, but they said the last time that Biden had a PAS test was in 2014. Well, if mine was in just a regular blood test, well, then why? Are we to assume then that Biden has not had a blood test for 11 years? Is that what we're saying? Oh, my wife said, well, there's a comprehensive blood test and more of a regular one. So even if it is a comprehensive test, it seems like he would have had at least one comprehensive blood test in the last 11 years. It's hard to believe that doctors would have overlooked this issue of his prostate. And now, we need to pray for his health, that he's going to get through this. But because of his age and his other health factors in his life, it's hard to say. And now, in light of what we know about this cancer, it makes you wonder, did his doctors not know anything about these things back when he was running back in 2024? When all these people watching YouTube videos could see him in decline, just in everything, he was in decline. So it makes me wonder when the doctors really knew about this cancer and why they waited to announce it the day before this critical book was going to come out, and the Hur Report. And then the Democrats all said, once the cancer report was out, well, we can't go into this now because we have to show sympathy to the former president. We have to stop this investigation. We have to stop talking about the Hur Report. We got to stop talking about this Jake Tapper book. We've got to focus on Joe Biden's health, his prostate, his cancer. And then the Democrats are saying, we're looking forward. We're looking forward because the questions have been asked. Well, didn't you see these things, his health decline? Didn't you see this? Into the press. Didn't you observe that he was in decline? And all these Democrats are saying, we're not looking back. We're not looking back. We're looking forward. We're looking forward. And even I think Klobuchar, Senator Klobuchar, even said, well, this is not the History Channel. Oh, that is not the right answer. The media and the Democratic Party and the Biden White House were complicit in hiding the truth about Joe Biden's health for 2, 3, maybe 4 years. He should never have run for president. Never. There should have been a primary, and the voters should have decided. They should not have coronated Kamala Harris. There should have been a regular primary and votes by the American public. Joe Biden is going to go down as one of the worst presidents in American history, next to James Buchanan. With that, I'll let you go. Now, see you next time.